bring in law professor Jeffrey Lax from City University of New York. Jeffrey, good morning, and thanks for joining us. You know, these jurors had a massive responsibility. What's usually next for jurors in high-profile cases like this?
Well, you may have noticed that Judge Cahill mentioned after the sentencing that he wanted to speak to the jury. So a couple of things, especially in high-profile cases that are obviously can be very traumatizing. In the Dylan Roof case, the jury was clearly very traumatized by witnessing the defendant laughing about mass murder, and the judge talked to them about offering free counseling. So I would suspect that might happen in this case too. We don't know what the judge spoke to them about, but that's certainly one thing the court can offer and they're very concerned about. And the other thing in a case like this, obviously this jury is under a lot of pressure, Alex, because we know the media attention to this and even the politicians and the president speaking about it. So one other thing the judge might have spoken to the jury about is that they don't have to speak to the media. Obviously that may end up happening if they want to, but that's something the judge might counsel the jury about, that you don't have to speak to the media if you don't want to.
So, Jeffrey, if we think back to the Trayvon Martin trial, some jurors came forward explaining their decision and why they made that decision, and one even apologized to Trayvon's family. Would you expect any jurors in this case to come forward with any more insight?
Boy, you never know. Obviously, these are human beings. They went through watching that video, 9 minutes and 29 seconds, they're like any people, they're like you and me. They saw the same thing we saw. It's very hard to process that. There are some jurors in high profile cases that say they live with that the rest of their life. Jurors actually write about this sometimes, their experience, that they live with the decision for the rest of their life. And remember also, Alex, these jurors are exposed to things after the trial that they never got to hear during the trial because the judge is really careful to keep out evidence that would not be appropriate in their consideration of the verdict. So they're going to hear things for the first time now that they may say, oh man, I wish I knew that. But the judge did the right thing from my observation in excluding certain evidence. But that doesn't mean the jury aren't people. That doesn't mean they won't talk about it to the media. And as Professor Whaley was talking about, I agree with her that it's very unlikely to be overturned on appeal. But that doesn't mean the defense won't appeal and bring up the outside influence that the jury did not yet hear officially on the record.
Right. So now we know that the jurors, they took about 10 to 11 hours to come to this verdict. Was there anything surprising about the verdict that they reached?
It wasn't surprising to me.
Mm-hmm.
I thought this was a very uncomplicated case. There are some cases that are very complicated where you might get a lot of questions from the jury. I didn't think it was a very good sign when the jury had no questions at all for the judge. That's not a good sign for the defendant generally, because usually you want to see for the defendant, you want to see that the jury is contemplating, your culpability and your thought process. Here, they obviously didn't do that. And one of the things we talked about yesterday was that 90% of the time, the original jury's poll, when they sit down for the first time after the trial, very often the foreman will say, what's your initial vote? What's your initial impression? And they'll take like a quick straw poll of the other jurors. 90% of the time, that's the final vote. So when I saw the quick, in this case, I think 12 hours, 9 hours is a very quick return. I tended to believe that whatever their initial vote was did not change. So we don't know what they talked about. We're not allowed to know. But, it was, listen, when you see that kind of compelling video, that's something that, has an impression that sometimes doesn't take that long to decide.
Definitely. All right, law professor Jeffrey Lax, thank you.
Thank you.